What happens when you walk? What is the importance of thinking?
Well, look, critical thinking is a phenomenon that we have to learn. It's not something natural, right? And I think many people see a problem and they intrinsically can build the solution. And the solution many times is just wrong. I mean, if you look at the tragedy of military history, I mean, you would think people didn't think things through, you know? I was reading the other day, one of the major battles of World War II, they were ready for a different battle than they eventually fought. So they were preparing for one battle, and then somehow the leadership decided they were going to fight a different battle, and they took all those supplies, and both battles obviously failed. And I think life is a lot like that. You know, we have one battle that we're getting prepared with, and then we're prepared for rather, and then suddenly there's another battle that looms up, and we focus our energies on that, and both battles are lost. And I think we learned that that's, you know, life is choice essentially, and when we walk and we think, we realize that we have to make those choices. And you know, look, the difficulty with choice, I find at least, or I found, sometimes the choice that you make is the most painful and the least accomplished, but it brings you the most results. So you have to think that through as well, right? But you need to walk and think, take time. It's the pace, eh? I find, once again, it's the pacing. It's very good for you.
What is the problem with choice? Why don't we need war?
Well, I think with politics, obviously politics you don't. Because the showmen that we see as individuals are just that, the showmen, you know, they're not necessarily the people making the decisions, of course, you know. But, you know, sometimes there are great leaders. I mean, Winston Churchill apparently was a great leader. He really commanded respect and what have you as such. And so if we're fortunate, then we have a great leader who is capable of taking that walk with his opponent and resolving the crisis, you know. But I think you're right. I think it is a rare phenomenon. Again, political realities, right? You know, but you know, look, I think it all comes finally, like Tolstoy talks about. You know, ultimately comes back to the peacefulness of me. If I am naturally peaceful, I'm going to eventually want to live in a peaceful world, and we're going to realize that the industrial military complex is just about some people making money. Look, there's more money in war than there is in peace, for always, in every economy. And I think we have to change this capitalistic model. We don't need war. We need thoughtfulness now. You know?
Why must you stay with your initial job? Why must you have a career?
I think there are two things here. One is that you can congratulate yourself for having acted, right? You've begun, and let's say you've made the wrong decision, right? Now, my experience, and I think everyone's experience in a way, is that the wrong decision sometimes is the right decision, but you don't know it's the right decision until you've suffered it through. Gladwell says 10,000 hours, right? That's about 5 years. I'm educated as a philosopher, as you know, and my first job, it was tough. I mean, the guy looks at my resume and what have you, and traveled, and languages, and degrees, and what have you, and what can a philosopher do? I have no idea what he can do. So I said, think. Okay, well, we'll take you. And they took me as a trainee, advertising trainee. And it was just, I made no money, and I had to deliver, so long before the computers, of course, right, internet. Had to deliver these proofs of the advertisements out to the clients, and many clients would get angry and they'd scream and give abusive, and then you have to take it back to the office and they'd change it, maybe you'd have to do it again. So I was not making enough money to survive, really, so then I got a second job on a Sunday, and I'm really getting put off. Come on, this is like 5 days plus, you know, there's no time. I was just married and what have you, and I was going to quit. And then, after I think a long time, maybe 2 years, a position opened as an advertising salesman. And I began to be trained as a salesman, not as this bottom end, just worker, so to speak, but a salesman. And I was good at it, Luke. People seemed to identify with me. I identified with people. And I made a lot of money. So there we are. If I had quit, which I wanted to do, 2 years into the project, I wouldn't be talking to you today, right? So that's what Gladwell means, I think, is that sometimes we make a decision, and it is a bad decision. And that's why we have to be thoughtful going into the decision. But still we can make a bad decision. But it might not be a bad decision. We have to stick with it. I was reading that the government tells us in Taiwan, the average young person under the age of 25 has had 3 jobs. Well, that means they finished school at 22. They've had a job a year, basically. And now they're 25, and now they find a really good job, and they apply, and they go for the interview. And any intelligent manager will ask them, gee, I see you got all these credentials, what have you, but why have you had 3 jobs in 3 years, basically? And what are you going to answer? Oh, because I was waiting for you, boss. I mean, nobody will believe you, so you won't get the job. So I suspect that a lot of the workers that we see in banks or bus drivers or, careers like this, basically, or jobs like this, really, that are very, very basic, are people that have been flung back because they weren't thoughtful at the beginning, right? Like, spoke to a young person recently, worked for Starbucks, and do you like Starbucks? He said, oh, it's a good company, et cetera, et cetera. And so I didn't ask the question, like, where do you go from here? But, where do you go from here in Starbucks? Well, obviously you want your own store eventually, and you want to know perhaps the coffee business, I guess, but they don't turn the staff over very much, I've noticed. So obviously they're doing certain things right, but it would not be my sort of dream. Look, very, very quickly, I learned a real lesson one day. Went into a family mart, and it's just full of people, right? Big long lineup. So I finally get to the front, and I'm buying a few things, and this young man speaks to me in English. How are you today, sir? And what? What's this about? So I said to him, how are you? I'm fine. I said, do you like your job? And I'm waiting for, I hate my job, right? I can't stand my job, except like this. Or I asked a kid one day, a young man, he said, I'm going to for my PhD program, all these things. This guy says, yeah, I love my job. He said, in fact, I hope that we're this busy next year when I buy my own. Buy your own what? What do you buy here? He said, and he looked at me like I'm, kind of ridiculous. He said, well, my own family mart, obviously. So you're going to buy your own family mart? He said, yeah, the small ones or whatever. I'm making these numbers up, but 1.5 million, and I have 750,000 saved. So I'll soon have the money, and away we go. So there we are. There's a chap who started off perhaps as a wage slave and has now taught himself this kind of industry, and he's going to make a success of it. So obviously at the beginning he wasn't thrilled. You know yourself, you go into one of these convenience stores, it's just overwhelming, the amount of people, and no rest. There's never peace. But it excited him, so here we are.
What happens if you sell yourself short in your life?
Well, everyone tells us, look, that especially in the future, there are no jobs. The way we conceptualize work, it's over. It's finished. The basic jobs, like the policeman I was talking about today, or the 7-Eleven worker, bank worker, bus driver, these jobs will not be necessary. They can be automated, IT, obviously. Right? So what has not been, of course, really talked about a lot, maybe it's scary for the capitalists in a way, but there are. You're only limited by your own imagination when it comes to a career, right? Really. It's only your mind tells you this cannot be done, because obviously there are careers that you can't even imagine that are being created every single day. So if you're open to what could be. You know the man Rick Steves, I've talked about him before. He's the guy, he owns a travel agency in Seattle. Now he's a little bit younger than me, maybe 50 or so. And you can go to his site, ricksteves.com, I believe. And he went to Europe when he was about 18. He just loved it. His dad owned a piano store. Huh? So the theory was he was going to come back and eventually take over the piano store. So he came back and he did a little bit of that, but he said to his father, look, I got to go back to Europe. I just can't get over this experience. And so he did go back, and he spent 6 months, came back, and eventually that became his travel business. Because he didn't take you to the Eiffel Tower. He took you to the cafe beside the Eiffel Tower that's been open for 250 years, that serves an espresso coffee like you've never tasted in your life. So he wrote like this, the way out of the way places. And that's his whole travel experience. Now he's got videos and many books as such. You see, and he created his own career. He's a small company, not big, which I thought was very clever. He only has, I think, 60 to 100 employees. But he's 6 months a year, he lives in Europe making videos. And he's been all over. You can watch, anywhere you want to go in Europe, he's been. You can find one of his videos, and he's very, very helpful. Right? So there we are. That's another man to admire, because he's done it his way in that sense. So I really think if we don't want to be a wage slave, Luke, look, when I was young, if you didn't have a job, you didn't want a job, right? So now, it's if you don't have a career, you don't want a career, right? You don't want it, because a career is not easy, of course. It's hard, painful, you might fail, but the results are far outweigh 40 or 50 years of slavery, I feel. Economic slavery, wage slavery.